It's going live, do not disturb on. All right, let me see. You ready? They're ready? All right, I am ready. All right, everybody. Hello, everybody. Today is Sunday, December 11th, 2022, and this is my little Bible study, and we're going to be working in the book of Exodus, chapter 13, which is where we left off last time. Now, we're in the book of Exodus. We're currently running two books at one time, if you haven't noticed, if you've been joining in online. But we're going to eventually settle into the book of Genesis and finish up like the next 8 chapters ahead. All right, but until then, tonight we're working chapter 13. All right, and last time we were here, I think we left it off in verse 9. And if we didn't, well, that's where we're going to pick it up. Now, what I want to say about this chapter in chapter 9, or 13, verse 9, what we get here is something that we've all been exposed to in the modern era, but this is the positive end of it. Okay? And the way I like to relate this chapter and these things that we're talking about tonight is not toward the positive side, but also toward the negative side, okay? And what I'm talking about is the mark of the beast. All you have to do is open your eyes about 10 minutes, and you can learn that there are about 8 million different things said about exactly what exactly the mark of the beast is, all right? You hear all kind of things. You have people thinking that this new meta universe that what's his name from Facebook's putting together, that this is part of it. All right, we're talking about. You have other people say this is a combination of machines and man, and crazy things like that. You have others that'll say that the mark of the beast is a chip that's put either in your forehead or in your hand, right? A barcode. They said about the barcode. It goes all the way back to probably Social Security number when it started the Social Security Administration, I'm sure. But they were barking these kind of same kind of ideas, you know, even way back in them, and even probably before that even, all right? So nonetheless, in our minds, we've been exposed to all kind of ideas about what this says, all right? Most of them are just baloney. They're just people blowing hair because they don't really have enough noise to make with their face. It's just people trying to answer things that they don't have. Now, part of the reason that people don't understand the mark of the beast is because of Amos chapter 8, verse 11, where it says, you know, that we live in this day in a famine, you know. You live your life, whether in church or out church, you live your whole life and never hear what the Bible actually says about things. And that doesn't matter whether it's in church or outside the church. If you study the book, you actually begin to understand that a little bit. And the deeper you get in the book, the more you understand that we grew up in that situation. So people actually are pretty spiritually starving in a spiritual nature for truth. And when you start talking and speaking about the Bible, then by what it says, well, often people have a really hard time digesting it because it goes against much of
everything.
Yeah, how they've been churched, you know, right? How they've been churched and how they've been educated in our society. We've talked about before about the ideas, you know, that you just some social misconceptions that we all just have based on where we grew up.
Story coloring
Right. Yeah, that's right. Right. We have no idea what about. We already understand the story long before we could ever read.
Yeah.
Right. Well, part of that illiteracy then is what leads to the problem with this mark of the beast and why we don't understand it. Because to understand really what it is, you have to go way back into the Old Testament. And here we are back in the book of Exodus, chapter 13, verse 9. Now, I want you to listen really closely to what it says in verse 9. And it's talking about law, okay? Let's pick it up in 8. That's where we should pick it up probably. And thou shalt show thy son in that day, saying, this is done because of that which the Lord did unto me when I came forth out of Egypt. All right? And that shall be, listen to what it says about this. It shall be for a sign upon excuse me. And it shall be a sign unto thee upon thine hand, and for a memorial between thine eyes, that the Lord's law may be in thy mouth, for with a strong hand that the Lord brought thee out of the land of Egypt. Okay. Now that should ring some bells right there in your 21st century mind right there. We're talking about here a very positive thing. All right. Now, this isn't a physical mark that we're talking about. All right. But yet it's very important. And what it is that the Lord's law. So all it's saying is that you take God's law and you put it into your mind, all right, and it'll be evidenced in your labor or in your hand and what you do. Now, this is an Old Testament idea that you begin to get exposed to here in the book of Exodus. Before we get out of chapter 13, it'll say it again. All right? It's not just here in the book of Exodus that it says it. Go to Deuteronomy chapter 6. We're going to pick it up. We'll just go to Deuteronomy chapter 6 and we'll figure out from there. Go to Deuteronomy chapter 6. All right, let's see. Let's pick it up in verse 6 and see what happened. All right. Here in Deuteronomy, we got the law books again. Now, you got to remember where Deuteronomy is. Deuteronomy is given just before the people are getting ready to enter into the promised land. Okay? And Moses is reiterating the law. And listen to what he says about it. And these, bringing up in verse 6, Deuteronomy chapter 6, verse 6. And it reads, and these words which I command thee this day, we're talking about the law, shall be in thine heart. Verse 7, and thou shalt teach them diligently unto thy children, and shalt talk of them when thou sittest in thine house, and when thou walkest by the way, and when thou liest down, and when thou risest up. That thou shalt bind them, listen carefully, that thou shalt bind them for a sign upon thy hand, and they shall be as frontlets between thine eyes. Now again, we have this same statement made here in the book of Deuteronomy, again by Moses. All right, so Moses responds to saying this, and since Moses seems to be the prophet of prophets outside of the Messiah himself, well, maybe we should pay a little bit of attention to him. But again, here he's not talking about a physical mark. All right, let's take it in our minds. Let's go back to the book of Genesis in chapter 4. Okay, who was the first person that was ever marked by God in a positive way? All right, wasn't a positive character, but he was marked in a positive way, and that first person was Cain, right? When it came that God put a mark on Cain. Well, think about what Cain was, what Cain represents. Cain is a farmer, right? He's been cursed to the ground. God said, no longer, will the ground yield you food. All right, so he's cursed. There's nothing he can do. All right. But when God marks him, part of the idea of a mark can be somebody who is a prodigy. All right, so you got to realize Cain's not marked physically, because I've heard people say just racist stuff based on this. I mean, just flat out, just some really sick stuff. Why other people are more inferior to them generally is what it comes down to. But nonetheless, it's not a mark like that that's seen, all right? But it is a mark that does keep him alive, all right? And so the question you begin to ask yourself, does a mark that is a prodigy, how good of a farmer do you think Cain really was? You got to remember, it was God that formed Adam to till the ground. So God teaches Adam to till the ground, and then the person that's tilling the ground, according to verse 2 of chapter 4, is Cain. He's the tiller of the ground, while his brother Abel is the keeper of sheep. Right. So he's the other set to the modern agricultural set that's there in the Garden of Eden. Right. All right. So Cain has all this knowledge. So his mark is in his mind. So when he goes forth and meets people in the land of Nod, he has all this knowledge. Why shouldn't we kill you? Well, I can show you a way to live to where you don't have to move around from place to place. All right? I can show you a way to live that you're old and you're young will survive the winter. All right? So this knowledge is a very important tool then, and I believe it has a lot to do with how Cain was actually marked. It was marked with the gift and knowledge of agriculture. Even though he's cursed to the ground, he can't do it. But he sure knows how to do it. That's right, and he can teach others to do it that weren't cursed. And that should have been a good bargaining chip then to keep Cain and his family alive and doing real good and actually prosper quite well. In a desert setting, he goes forth and builds cities from there with his first son. But nonetheless, Cain is the first one who's marked. He's marked in a positive way, and it's not a physical mark. It's with knowledge, with understanding. All right? And that's exactly what this is saying. You're supposed to take that knowledge and that understanding of God, and you're supposed to take it with your right hand and place it into the frontlets of your eyes. And if you do, that will be on your lips and it'll be evidenced in your labor of your hands. All right, now, so that's the overall scope of what that means to be marked by God. All right? Now, at this point, then, let's just flip over to Revelation chapter 13. So if you're ever doing this, and you're talking to somebody and you can't remember how it goes, well, it's Exodus chapter 13 is the positive mark, and it's Revelation chapter 13 is the negative mark. So it's both chapter 13. Let me get to chapter 13 here, all right? And we're going to pick it up. Where are we going to pick it up? In verse 11 of chapter 13. We're going to be here just a little bit, but it's really important to cover this exactly right. All right, especially right after coming from Deuteronomy and the book of Exodus. All right, so we have this set up then that what we should have known from our Old Testament studies, but because we live in a time of biblical ignorance where nobody really studies the Old Testament, when you go around and you actually talk to pastors and things like that, you'll hear a lot of things. Well, I haven't preached outside of Matthew, Mark, Luke, and John in 20 years. I'm stunned by that. Because the Bible is such a rich place with so many topics and so much of what's going on, and even in today's world, that to just limit yourself to the Gospels is pretty sad, and it just shows the overall scope of how bad the churches are actually doing. Now you got to remember, at the end of this age, the church age draws to an end with this age.
No point in it.
Yeah, exactly right. So the whole idea of church is just about over. And you have a lot of these people living today that put church over even God.
Yeah.
They're more interested in what church is doing than what God's doing. And that's because they're not being filled with the Bible when they're actually there, which fits right into Amos chapter 8, verse 11. All right. So we set that up. The whole mark, none of it have, from the positive side of anything, has nothing to do with a physical mark. All right. It's just that you're supposed to take God's law and his understanding. You're supposed to place that in your forehead. And that'll be evidence in your hands, because you'll do something positive with it. Okay? Now, that's supposed to be a very positive thing. All right. Now, let's pick it up here, verse 11. Here we have the second beast of the book of Revelation. So this is the beast that's the religious beast. Okay, so this is the one that really causes the dysfunction and the malfunction with the great apostasy. So this is exactly the point where we're talking about the great apostasy. All right, verse 11, chapter 13, and it reads, "And I beheld another beast coming out of the earth." If you remember studies from Revelation, the other one came up out of the sea, which was the people, right? Well, this one comes out of the earth. And he had two horns like a lamb. All right, looks like the lamb slain even. All right, but when he speaks as a dragon. All right, and verse 12, "And he executeth all the power of the first beast before him, and causeth the earth and them that dwell therein to worship the first beast," which was a political beast, right? Whose deadly wound was healed. So we had one of the heads of the beast was trying to withdraw from the peace pact. All right, and that's when the Antichrist appears in and heals the deadly wound. This is that second beast. That's the religious beast, though, that appears and heals the deadly wound. All right. Verse 13, "And he doth great wonders, so that he maketh fire come down from heaven out of earth in the sight of men." This should remind you of some things about Elijah even.
Yeah.
They call him fire down from heaven. The book of Exodus in Egypt, remember? The fire that came down from heaven that was from God, if you remember, it didn't strike just like a lightning strike here. Right, yeah, it struck the ground and then it would seek out who it was to destroy. Yeah. All right, so this doesn't sound anything like that, but yet it does sound like he's trying to knock off something like Elijah would do, right? And remember, Elijah's one of these two last days prophets that you can pretty much nail down. Almost everybody agrees on Elijah. So nonetheless, you see another parallel and another attempt then to knock off. But just like he's knocking off what he means to be marked in your hand and in your forehead, well, this is another attempt at another knockoff with lightning. I mean, if you think about it, you can go to Vegas and you can see a guy on the stage shoot fire out of a lot more in his hands. Yep. I mean, right in front of people.
Oh,
That's right. But my point is, we understand how these things function. These things are not as big a mystery as they would have been in the days of Elijah, right? Right. So we know even those things can be fake. That was my point. Where were we? Verse 13? We got that one. 14. "And he deceiveth them that dwell on the earth by the means of those miracles," like calling down lightning from sky, "which he had power to do in the sight of the beast, saying to them that dwell on the earth, and they should make an image to the beast, which had the wound by a sword and did live. And he had power to give life unto the image of the beast." All right, people are like, what does this mean? It can be just a standard.
Yeah.
As long as you're the one that's the judge that's paying allegiance to it. It doesn't have to be any kind of a miraculous thing. It just has to be a logo that you will recognize and pay homage to. All right? "Which had the wound by the sword and did live." Verse 15, And he had power to give life unto the, we already got that, to the image of the beast, and the image of the beast should both speak and cause that as many would not worship the image of the beast should be killed. All right. Now, don't make no mistake about it. They can't kill anybody. Yeah. You'll know why from chapter 9. Yep. And I think we'll probably covering that a little bit when we get there. But don't let that throw you just because he threatened to. So what? What did Christ say? He said, if you want to follow me, you better be willing to bear your own cross. What do you mean by that? Well, he was dragging his up the hill so they'd hang him on it and kill him on the thing. You know what he's saying when you say that? If you're going to follow me, you got to be at least willing to. Yep. It won't be called for you maybe, but you got to be willing to. And that's your thing. That's what that word right there, something to be killed, that separates those from who would and who wouldn't. But nonetheless. Verse 16, and he causeth all, both small and great, rich and poor, free and bond, to receive a mark in their right hand or in their forehead. Exactly the same place that you were supposed to be marked by God. All right? But here, this mark has nothing to do with God. All right? This is the second beast. This is the apostatic beast that appears claiming to be Jesus and fulfills all the prophecies or apparently fulfills all the prophecies left to be filled. Including the second advent. So you got to watch out. Now, so it's in the same place, it's in some location. Now, why would since he's knocking off what it means for God, for the positive side to be marked by God, then this mark then will be just like that. It won't be one that's visible. All right, I've kind of said it before that if you wake up, some people say it's 666 tattooed on your forehead and your hand. Well, think about people like Charles Manson, right? Quite a sicko, tattooed cross sticker, and can you name, other than a handful of people who are now probably dead, including him, who's going to follow him? You wouldn't follow that none less to a line. No. I mean, you wouldn't even want to be behind him in one, right? So if you get up and you got 666 tattooed on your hands and on your hand on your forehead, that just means you drank way too much tequila and somebody abused you, right? You just got drunk and somebody drew on you. And that's all that comes down to. But that doesn't change where you should be marked, which is in your mind. Now remember that when you deal with the mark of the beast. This mark is not a physical mark. All right, listen to what else it says. Verse 17. And that no man might buy or sell save he that had the mark, or the name of the beast, or the number of his name. Now, buy or sell. What does that mean if you can't buy or sell? All that means is that you won't be allowed to buy and sell with the new monetary system unless you swear allegiance to this beast in this beast system. All right? Now, if anybody does that, then you are taking part in the great apostasy, as that's talking about. I mean, you'll talk about the great apostasy with some of these old codgers that come around and say, oh, that's what's going on right now. They need to go back and read it again because great apostasy doesn't occur until the Antichrist appears. And that's the time sequence, and they seem to be missing that and like to say that, no, this is something that's going on now. Well, they might be having trouble right now, but you ain't seen nothing yet. Yeah. This ain't nothing. But everybody will think that it's the greatest revival ever been held among men. Right, yeah. It's the great deception. It's the greatest deception that's ever been held. It's just, we're about there. If you're paying attention, it's going down pretty hardcore already. We've had references in the book of Revelation about the Euphrates drying up. Not only is it drying up, but the Mississippi River as well. We got other references where vials have been poured out upon the sun. Well, if it gets hotter, we got more rivers drying up. We got a lot of stuff going on that's actually talked a lot about in the book of Revelation. It's all happened right before our eyes. And we said, you open it up and look. You don't mind looking around. There's all kind of stuff. You got to just spend a little time working because you got to separate fact from crap when you get online. You have to look at everything very discriminatively, always. But nonetheless, you'll see a lot of it going on. Listen to what it says. Listen to what it says. This is verse 18. Here is wisdom. All right. So now remember in John chapter 1, wisdom with God in the beginning, right? Way back there in the very beginning when God was already wise. Let him that hath understanding count the number of the beast, for it is the number of a man. And his number is 600, and his number is 600, 66. All right, it's not 666, but it's 6, 6, 6. Okay, it's not a case. And what are you told to do? We're told to count in the simplest terms. Now, you can get a real big, long, deep lesson and get all the way back to Kenites with this, but I don't want to go there. What I want to do is I want to do exactly what it says. It says to be wise and to count, all right, and to count the number then of the beast. It's 666, all right. There's 6 seals, 6 vials, and 6 trumpets, right? And you count. You count 1, 2, 3. No, that's part of the deception or not, all right. You bear the mark of the beast if you believe that this beast is Jesus, all right? Then you have sealed in your mind the mark of the beast because you have been harvested on the 6s, the 6 seal, the 6 vial, the 6 trumpet. That's what the 666 means. It's not a part of the mark. It's a part of how to count the beast. Right, he comes in the 6s. Well, on the 7th, who comes on the 7th?
Completion.
The real Messiah. It was 7. The 7 is just spiritual completeness, right? 666, that's the number that you got to count. That's the one you don't want to bear. You don't want to put that in your mind saying that man is Jesus right there. Remember what it warns you. All the Gospels warn you of the same things. They teach nothing in the Gospel, but they're going to teach you about this. All of them, that deception in the last days is your greatest enemy. Deception. So when the Antichrist appears and he deceives the world, and if you confess that he is Jesus, then you've placed into your mind the 6s, and it'll be evidenced in your labor because you'll believe that he is Jesus, and you'll be willing to labor. So if you bear this mark, guess what, though? But what if you have a daughter, or what if you have a husband that says, no, this is what the Bible said. This is the Antichrist. What this goofball will say is that, well, then bring them to me so we can convert them. But that's exactly the point. This is the thing that everybody should want to happen to them. They should believe as a Christian, you're not everybody's eligible, but it should be your desire just the same, right, to testify against this guy, right? Right. You should be willing to do that, right? That's right, because it's not even you that speaks, right then. That's God that's doing the speaking. You just sit there and shut up. And then when you're done, you go home. Yeah. Even then, though, your dad,
people around you after that are going to question.
That's right. Yeah. People who have looked at you and said, I don't believe these people. I don't believe them. But then it says, then your testimony will change even their minds, right? So this mark of the beast is a big deal, all right? But in the part of the deception of the mark of the beast is exactly what it is. Right, and it's actually deception. You, instead of placing the seals of God, here, let's just flip over to chapter 9. Let's just go over there. We're in Revelation. Go Revelation chapter 9. Let's see, where are we going to be? All right. Well, let's do verse 4. Yeah, that'll work. All right, now here in chapter 9 of the book of Revelation, we have the locust armies appeared, remember? Yeah. We've had a falling star kicked out of heavens, who's none other than the master of the bottomless pit, and Apollyon or Babylon, who you learn who he is in the end of this chapter. All right, so he's been kicked out of earth. He just all this deception involving the mark of the beast and those things are all occurring right there in front of everybody. All right, and this is what it says about the locust army. Now remember that the locust army is comprised of fallen angels, humans, evil spirits, all those things that either have been deceived, right? Either from the first heaven and earth age or in this one, all the way up into this one. All right. So that's what the locust army actually is in the end. Now listen to what it says about them, all right? Verse 4, and it was commanded them that they should not hurt the grass of the earth, speaking of the locust army, or any living, or any green thing, neither any tree. All right, so we know it's not a real locust, then, because that's the only thing locusts eat. All they eat. Yeah, all right, so we know we're talking with a metaphor here. All right, but who can they hurt? Only those men which have not the seal of God in their forehead. All right, where were you supposed to take the seals? Supposed to place them in your forehead, and they would be evidenced in your right hand in your labor. All right, and then the words of God would be on your lips. All right, that's what that's all about. But here, these guys, these are the only ones that this Antichrist and his locust army can even touch are those that have not the seals of God in their forehead. All right, and to them it was given that they should not kill them. All right. Oh, excuse me. Even the ones that bear the mark of the beast, even the ones that look at this dude and say, oh, it's Jesus. I was wrong all my life. All right. Even those people that swear allegiance to him, he doesn't have the authority to hurt them, to kill them. Right. He can sting them like it says.
Yeah, but what the sting?
Yeah, but what is a sting? Right. It's temporary and it'll be over soon. All right. Should not kill them, but they should be tormented 5 months. This is how long the whole thing lasts, from the very beginning all the way to the very end, 5 months. And it'll be stated the second time in this chapter if you go ahead and go and keep reading. And their torment was a torment when the scorpion striketh a man. All right. Well, think about it. You always hear all these voodoo and this stuff about deadly scorpions, and there are some pretty deadly scorpions out there. That's no joke. But most of the time when a scorpion strikes a man, it just makes them yell and say some stuff that would make their mother embarrassed. All right? Because it hurts really, really bad. But nonetheless, I've seen everybody I've ever seen stung. I've never seen one person so much as really other than cuss.
Yeah, I've never seen you.
Other than that, that's right. Right. So then when the scorpion striketh a man, it's not that big deal. All right? It just stings a little, and that's all that comes down to. Now, you get into a lot of other stuff. But nonetheless, you see here that the only people that the locust army can attack are those people who haven't spent enough time to put the seals of God in their forehead. All right? And you say, well, where are these seals at? On chapter 6 of the book of Revelation. All right, you remember what the first seal is? It's the apostatic horse. It's the white horse that goes up the one with one crown. Yeah. All right, but yet he's on a white horse. All right. Yeah. And so those seals are very, very important. And we've even did some special, we did a different special study on the seals, I believe. And if we're not, well, we need to. But this is pretty close. Because if you get that, if you get this, then you can at least capable of being sealed, right? If you can understand then that the mark of the beast isn't something that somebody grabs you and tattoos into your forehead. If it was, you wouldn't follow anybody. They wouldn't deceive anybody. Try it. No. If you think so, put 666 on your forehead with a permanent marker and see what kind of a reaction you get. Okay, you'll be in jail pretty quick anymore. But you get the point. All right. Now that's let's go back then real quick and go back to where we started, all the way back in the book of Exodus, chapter 13, and we're going right back to 9. All right, because I want to go down one more time because it does repeat this call one more for a little quicker. All right. So that was verse 9. Listen to 10. And thou shalt therefore keep this ordinance in this season from year to year. All right? We're talking about Passover. That's a part of Passover, right? Even up unto this day. All right? And it shall be when the Lord shall bring thee into the land of the Canaanites, as he sware unto thee and to thy fathers, and shall give it thee, that they shall set apart unto the Lord all that openeth the matrix, and every firstling that cometh forth of the beast that which thou hast, the male shall be the Lord's. All right? Remember, at the beginning of this chapter, he claimed the firstborn of Israel. Right? Well, now he's talking about other things, the firstborn of all the animals and things like that. Okay, listen to what it says about this. All right, because now it's only the firstlings. All right, it's only the firstling that is eligible for sacrifice. It has to be something that is born first in the spring, the first one for that year. All right, so a sacrifice has to be a firstling, male or human. I don't want to say human sacrifice, but the ones that were being conscripted into the clergy were the first fruits or the firstborns of the parents that they had. Right, the ones that were spared in the land of Egypt with the blood of the lamb. All right. And it shall be verse 14, and it shall be when thy sons asketh thee in time to come, saying, what is this that thou shalt say unto them, by the strength of the hand the Lord brought us out from Egypt and from the house of bondage? And it came to pass when Pharaoh would hardly let us go that the Lord slew all the firstborn in the land of Egypt, both the firstborn of man and the firstborn of beast, which is the subject of what he's taken here in chapter 13. Therefore I sacrifice to the Lord all that openeth the matrix, being male, but all the firstborn of my children I redeem. Okay. Now, what you find is for every unclean beast, all right, you have to sacrifice a lamb that redeems the unclean beast for service in the temple. Okay. Now, think about that, how that lays out. The lamb, the sacrifice of the lamb, we had the blood of the lamb then in Egypt. Yeah, the sacrifice of a lamb that cleanses an unclean animal. All right. Well, think about Christ is the Passover lamb, right? And then that sacrifice, because of that sacrifice, then we are then cleansed. It's the same scenario that's brought forth in the law with sacrifices that actually is carried out completely on Calvary. Matter of fact, you can look front to back in this book, and every law involving sacrifice and the Passover was all fulfilled with Christ. None of them were broken. And it's part of the overall prophecy about who he actually was. All right. But nonetheless, okay, but the firstborn of man, that opens, that's where we were. Verse 16, and it shall be for a token upon thine hand, all right, this law that we're talking about, shall be for a token upon thine hand, and for frontlets between thine eyes, for by strength of hand the Lord brought us forth out of Egypt. So here again, that same thing is repeated again within chapter 13 really quick. Now, if you don't know, anytime, this is a common theme that you'll see in the Bible. When there's something that's being emphasized, that's exactly how you're going to see it. You're going to see it repeated very quickly right afterwards. And so this is one of the things then that Moses was emphasizing, what it means to be marked by God. Now, a bad person like Cain can be marked in a positive way. Yeah. Nebuchadnezzar was the king of Babylon, but yet he was God's servant. God. That's right. That's right. His curse was to be cursed to the ground. Yeah, the mark was something that keeps him alive. Right.
Cursed to God. He's cursed to the ground.
And when it came to Cain and something like that, something like that has actually occurred. And it's just you say, well, how do you know that? Well, it's because I read a history book.
Yeah, it's crazy the way it moves.
That's right. Yeah, I read a history book. Somebody in the right there in the whole Fertile Crescent is where agriculture begins, and that's the subject of the book of Genesis.
Then it spreads out
rather quickly, right?
Yeah.
Well, how did he get out?
Yeah.
Well, Cain's the most logical one because he's the one that was taught. It wasn't Abel. Abel was a keeper of sheep.
He stayed where he was.
Yeah. Cain was the tiller of the ground. He was the one expelled in the land of Nod. And when you look historically, then that's exactly where agriculture develops. Now, the Sumerians, who I'm not going to talk a whole bunch about tonight, but the Sumerians, they have a little cylinder cut that we found. All right, and what the cylinders were they were stone, and they carved it into a cylinder, and then they relief cut a picture all the way around it, and they rolled it out in wet clay, and it told a story. Yep. Well, one of these stories that they wanted to preserve was called the giving of the plow. All right, and it represents a man and a picture of a man coming to the ancient Sumerians, even before they became a culture that grew cities and were monocropping like they did at least 7,000 years ago. And they wrote it all down. It depicts a man coming to them with a plow, teaching them to plow the ground. So, and this is a common theme into a lot of different, even creation myths through the rest of the world, even somewhere centering around agriculture anyway. But it's a big one in the Bible, and we're going to get back into that with our friend whenever he gets back. But so that's it for tonight then, and that's a little bit more about the mark of the beast. Don't forget, don't fall for this, Besides, you could be missing out on Google glasses. If you think that's the mark of the beast, I want to fly my airplane with my brain. I mean,
don't have any control.
That's right. But the point is that I'm trying to make with all that is that people make a lot of fuss about a lot of things, but and most of them come within the realm of Christianity, and especially about this mark of the beast. I see it 10 times on Facebook, YouTube. Throws me up stuff all the time. The mark of the beast, mark of the beast, mark of the beast. Now, I watched one today. I put it on my little Bible study. One is from another guy. He's going to talk like almost exactly the same thing. Every once in a while I watch it. I want to see what he says. It usually takes 30 seconds before you flip it off. Yeah. He started talking. I was like, I agree with that. Oh, he's right. No, he's absolutely right. And there were 20 minutes, and I agreed with him pretty much all the way through it. So I was like, I'm keeping this one because I don't ever. And he was exactly talking about this. This is what he's even exactly. He talks a little bit about what we talk about in Genesis. He goes to all 4 of these places, even in Exodus. Then I don't know, I can't remember what he does in the book of Revelation, but this point that he's driving home is that the mark is not a physical one, right? It's something that's in your mind and it's evidenced in your hands by labor, right? Yeah, and I thought it was cool. I was so excited to finally find somebody who was saying something reasonable about it that I just saved that bad bird, put it on the website, or not on the website, but on the YouTube channel.
Oh, YouTube channel.
Yes, on the YouTube channel. Yeah, MyLittleBibleStudy.com, or excuse me, My Little Bible Study, no spaces, no capitals on YouTube.
Yep.
And then MyLittleBibleStudy.com if you're looking online. And then tonight, well, that'll be it. We got to see you next week. We should be back in the book of Genesis then.
Yes,
Yeah,
sir.
yeah, and we'll get another one knocked out. You guys have a good night.
Genesis is fun.
Let me turn
I'm just
that.
ready to see